be working with, for instance, wives of the diplomats in South Africa who volunteer their time, their skills. They have nothing to do except to accompany their husbands to these countries where they work. But we have them as our friends, and we have the national, the Friends of the National Library as our friends. They do tremendous work. If you have the diplomatic corps in your country, and most countries do, think about going to their functions. You will find out how much they would like to help in the library for free. Okay, so basically what I'm going to do, I will not even get too much into defining the development agenda. Some of my colleagues have already given you a taste of what is happening out there, who's doing what. If you go to the IFLA website, you will get more comprehensive introduction to the development agenda and its purposes. And where I really get to put myself is, why should we care? Why do we care? Why are we going to put our energy and our resources into this kind of work? Maybe some countries do not need to do anything about them, but where we are, it's our lifeline. The library and information science and service sector response. What do we do as the sector? Not as individual librarians, but as a sector. And I will look at the international level where everything is happening, and also go down to the continental level. Continental meaning the African continental level. We also have the AU, which is the African Union, talking about the Africa we want 50 years or in 2063. So there are very specific visions, very specific things that they want to see, and we are part of that. And then, of course, at the national level, where South Africa has its own national development plan, and as the National Library, we are an agency of government to ensure that their objectives, their strategies are implemented. So then I will share the specific projects that we do at the National Library and who we partner with in getting those things done. So then I will conclude. Hope you have good questions. All right. Just very, very briefly, you have seen the 17 goals and, of course, 169 targets. That's a daunting job. And, 2015 is not a long time ago where we could, between 2015 and 2030, it's a very short space of time. Because by 2030, these are some of the things that we will have to have begun to address. I was at a conference about 2 weeks ago in Uganda, and we were looking at how, as the library sector on the African continent are responding to SDGs. And so they asked me to talk about, well, at least to coordinate the conversation. And the first question I asked was, because their question was, how far are we? And then I said, have we started? Have we started? And why? What are our targets? Do we have a way of assessing our progress? No. Everybody thinks they're doing it, but there is not a real coherent way of saying, yes, we're doing it, and this is how we are going to assess ourselves and know what direction we are going. Okay, and of course you have all seen the 17 of them. And if you go again to the IFLA website, you will see for each one of them, libraries are posting what it is that they are doing in each one of those quests. It's a beautiful, beautiful picture. I didn't get a chance to, get it and show it to you. But it's very useful to individual libraries and librarians to, get a sense of what other libraries maybe are doing, and that you can work with them if you decide to. What problems are we addressing? And when I say we in this particular context, I wanted to say, well, we are human, and all the nice things that people usually say, but I wanted to have a more grounded reason why we need to be able to do this. If you look at the United Nations 2016, this report came out in 2016. It's called the Least Developed Countries Report. There are 48 of those countries that are identified in that report. And 33 of them, I mean, this is way over 50% of them, are on the African continent. And I, as an African, cannot close one eye and say, we're moving, we're going. Whether I live in these countries or not, it doesn't matter. But it is also my problem. It is also my problem. And so I am so glad that my country has decided that the job of the Department of Arts and Culture is going to focus on addressing these kinds of issues on the African continent, not just in South Africa. So it's a huge bite, but we feel that we need to do something. And I wanted to look at criteria that is used to identify the least developed countries. Look at the per capita income. This is one that I like to talk about because people don't have a sense of what makes you a least developed country. If you get a family of 4 getting 4.8 rands per year, I will ask Alicia to translate that into dollars. It's something like $500 US a year for a family of 4. What do you eat? What do you dress? What do you, where do you sleep? I know that we can't even get our head around it. But there are countries that are getting that. And then in terms of the human assets, you look at the stake they have in terms of nutrition, in terms of health, school enrollment, literacy. Again, I'm thinking about my experience in Uganda. And I know my sister is here from Uganda. I was so excited when they said education is free here. And I thought all the kids were in school. Guess what? There were so many schools, so many children running around when they're supposed to be in school. And I asked my questions. If it's free, why are they not going? Because in South Africa, people like to think that if education is free, everybody's going to go. No, it's free, but it's not compulsory. So people, families don't feel like the kids should go to school. The kids should be helping the family to plow, to do this. It got to me. And then, of course, the economic and political vulnerability, what they call the natural shocks. The level of exposure to these kinds of shocks. If you talk to a lot of my colleagues on the African continent, the national librarians in particular, each time we have a conference or a conversation or a get-together, I want to know, because we have decided we're going to do ABC. How far are we? Where are the blockages? How can we move from where we are to the next level? And they will tell you about what they call political interference. The level of change. This week you have this minister, next week you have another minister, it's a new politician. So there is no continuity. And how do you really manage your situation with so much change? And everyone coming in wants to have their own legacy. They don't care about what you have done and where you need to go next. They want to have a legacy. They want to have their own name. And so it's a lot of, a messy environment there. But that's our continent. Now, I can go everywhere and talk about what is happening. Let's find out what librarians are doing. I'll start with the international level, where if they want to see as part of development. So we, as national librarians, take advantage of these kinds of platforms. And we are able for them. That's really the key. When we align what we do with what they are supposed to do. That's why I guess we are called agencies. We are agencies of government for implementation, but we don't do that blindly. In other words, we are not taking any sides in terms of political winds and whichever way they blow. But if the Minister of Arts and Culture is given the responsibility to make sure that the public library sector is in place, it's vigorous, it's open to everyone, and it's assisting in every way of development, we will be there to show them how it's done. And in South Africa, we were very lucky. I must say we were very, very fortunate. Because after independence in 1994, the library sector came together and say, how do we transform the sector to ensure that we are part of, the experience of independence? So we came up with this beautiful, and I'm saying we, I'm talking about all kinds of librarians, every level. All my colleagues that are here have been part of that process. Come up with a national transformation charter that had specific responsibilities, that shows particular well-articulated strategies and targets. And so over the years, and I think it took us about maybe 10 years before we really refined it. And we have 10 good goals. And all the goals fits in the responsibility of all the ministers. And so we are able to go to the Minister of Arts and Culture and say, guess what? We're going to do 60% of your job. And we go to Parliament, to the Parliamentary Portfolio Committee, and say, guess what? We are the agent to actually do this. And so when they go back to Parliament to report, we write the reports for them. And we also bring the people that have been touched, that have been impacted positively by the work that we do, from the villages, from the communities. They are in Parliament when our minister provides his own report to Parliament. So you actually see, it's not just a report that, by the time you finish reading it, everybody's asleep. You have life stories, real life experiences. So we're taking advantage of that. And because of it, our minister of South Africa, in 2015, when we had IFLA in South Africa, how many of you were there? Yes, wonderful. We made a. Let me not go ahead of myself. When he was appointed, and the deputy minister was appointed, the National Library went to introduce ourselves. The first week they were in office, we said to the deputy minister first, who was a librarian herself, said, guess what? We're here. And we're going to do your work. And we introduced her to everybody. I'm sure every one of you who goes to IFLA has met her, because she goes to, so she can see what other countries are actually doing, meet the Africa section and all that. So we introduced ourselves to her, and of course she took us to the minister. And we introduced ourselves to the entire people and said, we are the people that are going to do your job. But during IFLA, for IFLA, we had convinced them, the minister and her, that they can actually drive the Africa we want at the AU platform, at the AU level. And we actually invited all of the ministers on the African continent who are responsible for libraries, especially the public library sector, because the public library is seen as the agent to drive development. And guess what? They agreed. We invited all of those things. We had 2 days of conversations with, it was a pre-conference, with the ministers and their national librarians from other African countries. And so they signed the Cape Town Declaration at that time. Look at what the declaration basically says. It says, recognizing the role of libraries in development, ministers and country representatives, and these are the countries that actually signed on: Angola, Burkina Faso, Cape Verde, Cote d'Ivoire, Lesotho, Guinea, Madagascar, Malawi, Mozambique, Nigeria, South Africa, South Sudan, and Swaziland. They signed that agreement to say we are going to work with libraries in our countries to ensure that we will deliver on the Africa we want. And look at what the declaration really promises to deliver. Provision of the necessary resources for development of African libraries. Fast-tracking the implementation of continental innovative strategies to improve the ICT environment, promoting library policies in their countries, and encouraging the establishment of institutional partnerships across the globe, across anywhere, and supporting the work of AFLIA, which is the African, all right, who knows what AFLIA stands for? I can't remember it. But it is the Association of All Librarians on the African Continent. Okay. It is the Association of, African librarians, and information science workers and services, and then we have to be in Africa. So it is through this vehicle that the declaration decided that they will work. So guess what? We're having a second conference of AFLIA and of ministers in 2 weeks' time, and it's organized by the National Library of South Africa and AFLIA. We already have about 25 ministers who want to be part of this, and 30 national librarians who are descending on South Africa in 2 weeks' time. And we are going to look at what has happened since we signed the declaration. I know Theo will understand me more than any one of you here because I've worked with him. Our real interest is for this project to become an AU project, not a South African project. We are not going to sign another declaration. We want AU to take it on and run with it. So that is the sort of message that we're writing down now. After all the deliberations, we will be in Durban at the ICC. After all the deliberations, we want these ministers to sign on to say they are taking it to the AU platform. The South African National Development Plan, as I've said to you, it's really a vision that everyone in South Africa will have access to information, and that, basically look at the target on the slide. The target is that we will become a society where opportunity is not determined by race or birthright, where citizens accept that they have both the rights and responsibilities, and most critically, we seek a united, prosperous, non-racial, non-sexist, and democratic South Africa. So the library field also understands that. But they have to interpret it within their own contexts and see how they deliver on it. We say that this is part of, okay, let's see if I can, it's outcome 14 of the entire National Development Plan. And we wanted to make sure that some of the members of the library sector are part of the commission that is working on the National Development Plan. Because that's another way that, they get to know who you are, what you stand for, and what you do. But if they don't see you in these very, very important platforms, they think they can do without you and without your institutions. So you want to be in their face. So this is what we do. In terms of the National Library of South Africa, I wanted to show you just the scope of involvement that we have. In 1 year, we have a total of 14 projects. And these are what we call the strategic projects. These are over and above what we normally do as a national library. We still do cataloging. We still do, your services and all that. These are what we call our SDG projects. And what I've done here, just to indicate what each one of them, the commitment, and some of these commitments are not in actual rands and dollars, they are in kind. So we work with a lot of different people to do all of this. At the most international level, we got some money for the provision of ICT. I'm just going to show you pictures of what happens here, but I wanted you to see. Where was I? Here. I want you to look at the provision of ICTs in public libraries. We were assisted by the Gates Foundation, where we were able to source $13.2 million 5 years ago. But we had already prepared the 9 provinces in terms of connectivity, internet connectivity. I know that, a lot of people are asking questions like, do we still need libraries in the digital age? Are they important and all? And my very quick answer is absolutely yes. We need libraries more than ever before. Simply because when you look at the statistics in South Africa, we have 54 million people, if they were well counted. I don't know, maybe some people are in between or whatever. But out of the 54 million people, 40 million people have cell phones, okay? But only under 10 or so million people have access to the internet. And where do they get access then, if not from libraries? They get free access from the libraries. And through projects like this one, we made it possible for public libraries to become the hubs that young people, old people, whatever, can go there and use ICTs. I know that university libraries, have been sort of isolated for so long. They are so comfortable in their spaces, they think, if anybody just walks through the door, whether all they want to do is sit down or have coffee, they are not sure. Show your ID, show your la 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 la. Yes, we need to have security and we need to protect our users, but we also need to think about very innovative ways of opening access in all its forms. So I will not go through each one of these, but just to show you the commitment of government of South Africa. I didn't include this in this, and I may not have even calculated correctly, but this is like something like $5 million maybe, somewhere around there, $5-6 million per year for the next 3 years. And when you listen to our minister in Parliament, because we go to Parliament to cheer him up, he likes to see that we're there. Remember, we work with him, so we make sure that he sees us. We're there. When he makes his budget speech and says that we are going to give 3 billion rands to the library sector for the next 3 years, you know that the opposition are going to say, we need bridges, we need, rivers, whatever. Then we have young people that we have brought in who are going to say, we need libraries first. We need libraries first. You have to be a politician, think like them. They listen to these people who make louder noises than we who write our words down for the most part. So, yeah. This is just a picture of students who have gone to university, gotten their diplomas, gotten their degrees in some form of, I don't know what they are, but the focus is ICT. They have ICT qualifications, but they have no jobs. They're not absorbed by the job market. Now, through the MLO, which is a, we call it Mzansi Libraries Online, that is a Bill Gates Foundation project. We have equipped over 700 public libraries with computers, internet, but we need people who can work these things. We need technicians who are going to provide, this kind of service to the librarians and also to the users. So these are the young people that we recruit to go work in our libraries. And in doing that, look at the kind of partners that we have brought on board. Microsoft South Africa is big in this project. Telkom provides, it's a telecommunications company in South Africa. They provide, this project, it's a 3-month training project. Telkom provides its entire training center. So these students live there, eat there, sleep there, get trained there for 3 months. And Telkom pays for everything. And then Business Connection pays for the training, because we have to hire people to actually come and do the training. We don't do the training as the national librarians, but we get people who will do the training that is necessary. And we work with the provincial library services, because these are the people who are now, we have given over the equipment to their libraries. We just oversight. We are not there every day to check if they are working or they are not working. They've taken it over. And then Microsoft actually teaches and trains them in one of their licensed projects. So when they leave this program, they are much more market ready than before. And we started with the first 65. And we had the second cohort of 200. Now the 200 one, I think we were a little more ambitious. And we said that we needed more of those young people who live with disabilities. We had 80 of them. And we had never dealt with people who live with disabilities before. Boy, it's something else. You cannot just take them as regular users. I mean, we had never had that kind of an exposure, but they have graduated. They are all now in our MLO libraries. There are 700 libraries. We have just gone to 265. We have an intake now of another 100. We are not going to do 200 at a time. It was very difficult, but this is what is happening. We also have another program where we are targeting librarians who have graduated. No jobs. They are not doing anything. So we raised funds. We raised about 32 million rands to have these young people come into the National Library. Well, while they are learning to become librarians, they are helping us with our cataloging backlog. That is the focus. And they will be with us for the next 3 years. And at the same time, we are exposing them to all, possible job environments. And we work with CHELSA, we work with university libraries, we work with public libraries, and we have a bus that takes them around, and some of them can spend a week or whatever, but what we want them to be involved. And so we pay their stipends, and even the ICT ones, we pay their stipends. This is my colleague Eddie. Some of you know Dr. Maepa, this one. He is really passionate about working with these people. We have 30 of them, 20 at our main campus in Pretoria and 10 in Cape Town, at our Cape Town campus. They have brought so much life to our work. You know, you can walk into a library where librarians have been there forever and they're not sure about what's really happening out there. And they just come to work and sit at their desk and talk to a few people, get coffee, and boy, we're busy. I'm telling you, we are busy. If you look at our social media platforms, I cannot handle that, but they are doing all that stuff. So we get to understand exactly what the young people are saying about our work, what we do, how we can change it to make it better, and all that. So we are very much involved. This also just shows that we are focusing more on providing support for education in every possible platform that we can get. These are the pictures I like. This is a picture where we actually use the celebrities. This guy with the red, shoes, Mushweu was his name. He was a soccer player. He's retired now. Well, they have millions of friends. But he gives the money. He gives his own personal time to read to young people. And this guy, have you ever seen his face before? He is our current president. He is the president of South Africa. He was our reading ambassador before he became the president. So we believe that he is going to continue to support us. Actually, when is the 22nd of June? He will be at the National Library of South Africa celebrating the Youth Month. So he was our reading ambassador. Now he doesn't have time. And and this is moi. We work with the SABC, the South African Broadcasting. What is it? Yes. We have this annual reading festival that we do in the Western Cape every year. And on the opening day, we are given the 2-hour slot of Morning Life, just to focus on what we do. We encourage public libraries and librarians to participate in book clubs. So the book clubs are competing first at the provincial level, and once they have made it at the provincial level, they come to the national level, and we give them prizes and all that. We do this with the Department of Correctional Services. We have a lot of inmates who are participating in this. You can imagine the first time I went there and I saw all these people in orange, and there was no security. Well, I didn't feel quite right. But we work with them now, and because we work with the inmates that are close to leaving, correctional services and come into society, and we hope that they are better people than what they were before. This is more about our Funda Mzansi thing. We also are a publisher. We work with friends of the library to publish our bulletin, which is accredited. It's an accredited journal. And then we published what they call I may not pronounce it correctly, a Vryskrift. Can somebody help me pronounce that? Yeah. that. We published this for Professor Seth Manaka. Some of you may know him. He is a retired professor of library science. He has actually trained most of the black South African librarians in the country. So what we did, we wrote all kinds of stories about him, how we interacted with him, and we launched this book at IFLA in 2015. And we went back to his alma mater, where he had started the library school, to launch it. So we cooperated with the university at the time to actually do it. We also encourage young people to write their own stories. Some of you don't, if you don't know much about South Africa, when you look at what the National Library collected over the years, the publications, there were hardly any publications in indigenous languages, because indigenous languages were not considered significant, or the stories were not significant. And so we are trying to grow that, because what they think matters, you know, what they experience matters. So yes, we publish this. We do about 25 titles a year, and we give scholarships to these young people to do the publications. And we have a group of former publishers, former editors, former people who know how to go through the publishing field, who are giving us their time to train these people and to finally come up with these publications. And we have gone back to communities. You know, writing in indigenous languages have been happening for many, many years in South Africa. But as I'm saying, they were not included in the mainstream literature of the country. So we went back to the 9 provinces to find out what books they had and what did they consider the classics. We did this project with an organization called PANSAP, Pan-Africans PANSAP. Well, they are responsible for the development of indigenous languages in the country. These are professionals. So we identified about 100 titles that we call classics in all the official languages, including Afrikaans, because we think Afrikaans is only spoken in South Africa. I don't know if it's spoken anywhere in, yeah. We have our classics, and we are reprinting these classics and channeling them through the public library system in all the 9 provinces. We have reprinted about 500,000 at this stage, and we continue to do the reprints. This is where we work with library schools. The students come for internships. You know, we all went through that process. We still do it too. These are interns that are coming from library schools, and we do spend time with them and talk to them about our own career journeys as librarians. And so at least they have an idea of what to look forward to. We also work with a company called Cell-C. Cell-C is a telecommunications company in South Africa. And they promote the Taking Girl Child to Work program. And I think it's a worldwide program. Yeah, so we do that with them, and we encourage the staff members to bring girl children to work. Even our male staff members bring their own daughters. But we have a little twinge on it. We have a day for boy children too, because we kind of felt they were very neglected. In our preservation program, they tell me, and I haven't verified this, that the deacidification plant that we have, it's only one of its kind on the continent. So as a result, we just don't do it for ourselves. We do it for everybody else. We restore the manuscripts in Timbuktu. We work with the Timbuktu government to do that. We run digitization workshops. And we have just concluded a Nelson Mandela collections of his own handwritten manuscripts that we deacidified every page, that was done by the Mandela Foundation. And then the elections are coming next year. Now you will see how the politicians are going to use us. We will be very selective in what we agree to do and what we don't agree to do, but we like to have more of their money. The IEC, which is the Independent Electoral Commission, uses our public library, especially the MLO public libraries, to do election or voting, education, and that kind of stuff. It's a democracy drive. And so we encourage them to really get involved in all the communities if they can, and we support their work. But we don't support the work of individual politicians, even though sometimes they hijack our things. You go to a particular community, you think you're going to open a library, the new library that we've just given them, and everybody shows up in ANC t-shirts. And you wonder which meeting they're actually attending, and it's your meeting. So are you going to tell them to take off their t-shirts? No, you just do your job and leave them alone. Here, I wanted to show you the individual sectors, the individual companies and individuals and government departments that we work with. We have a section, a department, if you may call it, in the National Library that really looks at what is happening here. What is it that they are doing that we can do with them or do for them? It's their job from whatever time that they come to work. They have to look out, scouting for this. And this is just more of the different organizations, the individuals, the business sector, the international organizations. I'm going now to UNESCO. I leave tomorrow. Tomorrow is what? Friday? Saturday, I'm on the flight to go to Abuja, which is in Nigeria, to talk on behalf of the UN. I'm not even a member of the UN. I'm not. Well, my country is. So I will be talking to them about how we do the AG. Yeah. So we really are in this space. Here I wanted to just briefly run through the specific projects. Some of them you have already seen. Look at the partners, the BCX, Telkom, Microsoft, Gates Foundation, Sabinet, DAC, and the Public Library Service. The Public Library Service Centers, there are about 9 of them. So there are 9 ministries that we have to work with to make sure that the ICT internship project is done, the equipment, the internet connectivity and training for 700 public libraries actually takes place, and we deliver on it. The South African Library for the Blind works with us very closely because we have what we call the mini LIPs. In every one of those libraries, they have to come in with the equipment for people who have there are very different names that they use for themselves. They are not always blind; they are visually impaired. I think that's what they use. And then the National Lotteries Commission. We went there and they gave us a lot of money to buy equipment for our digital scanners. The Council on Higher Education is actually driving our project to ensure that the quality of our academic qualifications is looked at and it's improved. But the entire sector, LIS sector, is involved because it is our job. The Lulaway Job Centers, in our MLO libraries, they have brought corners where they deal with job seeking and they advertise jobs that are open for young people, and they help them to write their CVs and all that kind of stuff. The Africa Ignite, they train young people. You know, there are so many young people in communities who are just idle. They're not doing anything. Rather than for them to be sniffing all kinds of things, come in and learn how to tell a story. And they do that. The Department of Correctional Services, you have seen them with the annual Funda Mzansi, and the University of Pretoria in particular is doing some work with our ICT trainees. And LIASA, they have a professional development and training project that we work with them on. And that's all I wanted to say today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor. Yesterday, she was harassing me. She was tormenting me. She was asking me, how did this all come about, Elisha, that I speak in this very last delivery, and what am I going to say? But after listening to her, I think she was just joking with me. Maybe we could have a few questions before we break for tea. Well, not large first, other people. Any questions from the audience? If not, then the host.
There's a hand.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Thank you so much. That was fantastic and very inspiring to us all, I'm sure. My question is about, because with sort of IFLA and the SDGs, it always feels like it's a little far away from the rest of us. So you were talking about, how many of us are involved, I was part of some conversations in a previous country where I was working, but it seems really hard to get involved at the grassroots. And I wonder if you had any comments or advice for those of us who would like to do more than show up for one of the IFLA conversations, and then it seems to just fall away from our day-to-day work.
Okay, that's one question. Do you want to answer that, or you can take, or to take? Okay, okay. So she will take more questions. Any more questions before we give to Lash?
I don't really have a question, more of a comment. I mean, IATUL is a global organization, and we have many presentations here at the conference on bibliometrics, on computer systems, on new services in libraries, very often in rich countries. And I think that the core idea behind a conference like this is, of course, that we shall learn, but also that we go home and be inspired, and this inspires me. We have to not forget that librarians have very different challenges around the world. We live very different daily lives, but we can learn from each other. And we would also like in Norway to have a plan for a national transformation charter.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for your question. When I was in Uganda, a lot of librarians said, yeah, this thing just flies. It's for politicians over there and chief executives and all that. My simple answer is, find a way to work with public libraries, especially community libraries, because that is where it's at. That's really where it's at. That is where you're going to find the NGOs. You're going to find the development workers. You're going to find different people who are trying to make the world a better place. I know that university libraries, that space doesn't allow you to do that, except that many universities would have a broad program on community engagement. Those are spaces that you can begin to look at and see how you want to get involved. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, just before we go, Professor, for sharing with your wonderful team at the National Library of South Africa. Yes. Okay.